Last week I sat down with Justin Farina in this very room, the studio that I've made all the music in over the last 5 years. 2 microphones, no script and a lot of truth. We dived into myself playing in bands throughout my teens, launching the record label, throwing parties, and how some of the biggest DJs within the scene played my music around the world. And why, after all that, I'm pretty much pressing reset to make the most raw, honest and vulnerable album that I've ever put my name on. Enjoy.
Thanks for being here, man.
Thank you.
Great to sit down and have a chat, and I'm looking forward to getting to know a little bit more about you. So tell me a little bit about your journey as a musician and producer, artist.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, so for me, music's been a key part of my life. I learned from a young age that music was my love and my fascination. It's felt like a quest in many ways, diving off through the different chapters of my life, enjoying different types of music. And I've spent most of my life, most days this way, you know, exploring different passions and learning how to produce. And in my later teens, I spent my teens going to see bands and playing in different bands and it being very much instrument based. And then when I was 16, 17, through the influence of my older brother and his friends, I found myself amongst a little scene of DJs and music lovers, and we was going to these underground house parties and stuff like this. And through that, I then started exploring and making a completely different sound of music, which was dance music. And because I knew nothing about that sound, there was some fascination there. I'd grown up listening to the bands and everything else and live music, so there was some fascination there with where's this music coming from. And I then spent the next 5 years exploring that sound, and in many ways it's come full circle, right? All the music that I've pretty much shared over the years has been this electronic based sound of underground house music, very minimal, very niche sound. And it's been nice to explore that. This is the type
of music that you would hear at like a rave or
something
parties.
Like that, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Played by DJs on dance floors around Europe and around the world, and it's been great. I learned a lot through that and exploring that to get music to sound good on these big sound systems. And I always wondered when I was 16, 17, I was at the back of these parties thinking, I wonder if I can get my music played by these sorts of DJs in this sort of caliber of parties. And that I went on that quest of trying to achieve that through just consistently showing up and exploring my love for music and figuring out that sound. And that leads me to this chapter, right, of recognizing that in many ways it feels like it's come full circle, and I'm now feeling that calling and that love to be back on the instruments and producing a sound that's in many ways a bit more raw and true to myself, because it's what I grew up listening to. It's actually the music that I go off and listen to in my spare time, right? So it's been great exploring the electronic music, but I can definitely feel that now's a time for me to be diving into the instruments and writing songs and using my voice as well, stepping out and doing things that I've probably shied away from being in my comfort zone of enjoying the electronic music. The music that I'm stepping into now is very much a raw, honest feeling that I felt deep within, and I've just recently committed to producing an album that's this sound, right? It's that stepping into, I'm not sure how it's going to look yet, but at least I've committed to exploring this sound that's a bit more true and deep to me.
And I'm looking forward to asking you a little bit about this new music, because I know I'm personally very interested in it. I've heard little snippets of it and it's been beautiful. Honestly, it's been really beautiful what I've heard so far. But on the dance music, firstly, did you end up getting your music played by any of those DJs?
Yeah, I did. It was over the last couple of years, really. I was probably like hammering it every day of making this like slow progression. But over the last couple of years, it has sort of like dawned on me, like, wow, I kind of in many ways done what I set out to do. You know, there I am, like standing in the parties that I was once standing in, knowing nothing about that music. There was so much mystery by like who was making it and where the DJs were getting the music from. And I'm pleased to say that, in many ways that quest felt like it was completed over the last couple of years of my favourite DJs, at least, playing the music in the parties that I once stood in the back of. Yeah. I'm pleased to say that.
And so you've done some shows, right, as well?
Yeah.
Where have you done some shows?
Well, it's interesting. I've done one in London, a couple here locally in Somerset, and then I also had a crazy experience of being flown out to Armenia for a headline set as well, which was great to DJ. And I never started making that music to DJ, but it does very much go hand in hand with it. You know, in many ways they kind of expect you, if you're making that music, in many ways they expect you to be able to DJ and everything else. And I'm lucky enough, because I met those lads that got me into the music in the first place and showed me that world. That was a group of like 8 to 12 amazing DJs. So just through hanging around with them, luckily I learnt to mix records and everything else, which later come in handy, right, when it comes to throwing parties. I've done a couple of events myself. But yeah, really the pinnacle of it was being flown out to Armenia. That was something that I could never have predicted, right? In a place that I didn't even really realise the music had landed. It was kind of a surprise to me that I was flown out there and had a great time. Great time.
Anyone watching that's been to a rave in Armenia or in many places throughout Europe might have actually heard some of the music that you created being played by the DJs.
Most likely, yeah. Even though they wouldn't have known it. Yeah, most likely, yeah.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
And so you were saying that you now are finding this new sound, this new type of music, right? So tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, it's interesting because I always, from a young age, right, I was fascinated in recording music, and I spent my teens going to see bands and everything else. And to be honest with you, I always thought I'd be in a band. You know, that was the vision. I thought I'd be. Yeah, I thought if music kind of went well, I always saw myself playing music live and being in bands and probably be traveling as a band, right? Yet, reaching 16 and finding that electronic scene was very much like a right-hand turn that come out of nowhere, right? Anyone that kind of knew me was kind of surprised that all of a sudden overnight I was enjoying and exploring making electronic music, because I was leaving alone all the instruments and stuff I grew up playing. It was kind of a bit out of the blue.
And you went to an actual exclusive music school, right?
Well, it was a performing arts school. It was a performing arts school, yeah, and it was good for me because I got used to performing in part of, like, even in the assemblies and stuff, right? I'd get called up to play guitar, so it was good for me for that, and I had to perform to get in there, but it wasn't like a super high quality, right? I've always kind of found that even going through college and stuff, studying music, I've always sort of found that it's the stuff that I've gone out and done on my own where really you can take it as far as you want to take it, right? But I was always kind of looking for a bit more substance in the music school that I went to, or the performing arts school I went to, and then later in college. And it actually led me then to, I got to the 18 and I just thought, right, you know what, it's time for me just to be on my own schedule now and dive into this. I kind of knew what I wanted to do by then, and it was clear. So yeah, I did. And I'm grateful that through those schooling years I did actually get practice to be playing music regularly and everything else. But the actual teaching, the actual courses themselves were very, very basic. You know, it was everything we'd done outside of that was where the development was happening, the growth was happening. But I was grateful to have able to do music at least, right? I was able to take GCSE music and then study it at college as well, and then I stopped it there and then just been on my own schedule from then.
So from music schools to DJing to now,
this is it. So going back to the sound of it, what I was getting at there is that even though it's a new sound because I've only just fully stepping into it, right? It's in many ways something I've shied away from, which I can hold my hands up and say it's because it's a bit more raw and a bit more vulnerable, right? And this idea of producing an album or producing music that's me just getting by on the instruments and also recording it and mixing it and possibly even mastering it, and it being me on vocals and me on the instruments as well. I've always sort of wondered what that would be like. And then being able to play that with a band and having a band or being in a band where I can write music with them and perform it live. So it's not an idea that's just come out of nowhere. It's actually an idea that's been with me most of my life since the age of 12, right? And it's only just now that I'm recognising, okay, this feeling like there's something in me to explore the depths of me being a bit more raw and vulnerable hasn't gone away, right? It keeps showing up in every different chapter of my life of like, I still wonder, right, what it would be like to fully step into producing music that's on the instruments and very much a sound that I love. But what that's taken is for me to not only know myself a bit more, my character, and go on that journey of understanding myself, what holds me back, my ways of being, what keeps me happy, but also growing up a bit. I think it's a big part of it, actually having life experience, like feeling like you're writing music coming from a certain place rather than the immaturity that I probably maybe felt 10 years ago. But it's also stepping into my voice is a true factor, right? I'm very comfortable writing music and enjoying playing instruments and having my ways of doing things, yet it's the singing and everything else that's the bit that feels like, whoa, are you really going to do that? I've never felt like I've had much of a singing voice, and I've been on that journey.
I can relate.
Yeah, you get it. It's just a bit more raw and vulnerable, but as I said, it's been a reoccurring feeling that I can now recognise this isn't going away. Right, so it's just me again to have another leap of stepping out of my comfort zone and recognising I think the time's now. It feels like that.
So you say instruments, vocals. Is there a genre of music that this would fall under, or
and I suppose that's very much now what the stage I'm in. Right, I'm recording, I'm writing songs, and writing a song in its most basic form, I can then decide where to take it, right? So I'm still going to be going through this process of finding my sound, and I know that's ever changing, right? We always have different influences, and we're pulled in different places of what to explore. And music's endless in that way. But I've grown up and I still listen to band music, right? It was very much like indie music throughout my teens, but when I started learning guitar overnight, I was listening to Led Zeppelin and more the heavy rock stuff. So finding my sound within that. I'm very much imagining acoustic guitars, but also electric guitars, some sort of mix between indie, alternative, rock music.
Yeah,
as well as singer-songwriter, right? Any of those songs you can just take back to the guitar and the vocal. It's very much like you're sitting around a campfire. But I'm very much exploring that, and I'm sure it's going to develop over the years and everything else. But I suppose that's very much not only just committing to like right the times now to explore it, it's also committing to actually exploring it and what's it like for me going in these different areas of writing songs and turning them into full produced tracks. I can take them in different areas, but it's very much, you could just say rock music. Some of it may be a bit more poppy or indie, but I'm enjoying exploring that and recognizing that there's all these different directions I can go within this one sound, right? It's just me committing to doing an album that's on instruments and writing songs that way, rather than it being more synthesizers and drum machines, as I've put a lot of my energy, or at least the music I've shared over the last 5 years has very much been drum machines, synthesizers, and not so much me showing that I've played instruments from a young age and everything else.
Yeah, so you've obviously had quite a diverse range of experience in the music world, and you know it sounds like quite a an impressive journey that you've been on, and also an exciting time for you right now to be finding this sound. And I do want to get onto the coaching side of things. I know we want to talk about that today as well, but before we do, you know, it's also good to mention that like I said in the beginning, you've been producing throughout all this too. So you've not just been the guy that's been you know, performing, but you're actually producing. So like with the DJ tracks and stuff like that, you're producing all of this yourself, correct? And you're producing the music now. You've also produced for other people, is that right?
Yeah. Producing for some friends and some other people as well, producing their albums and records. And to be honest with you, I recognised that in my teens, and probably why I dived down that area of the different sounds anyway, and for a couple of years didn't use my instruments as much, or at least release music that had my instruments as much, because the production side of things and learning to record music but also mix music and get it to sound good, it was a big part of my fascination, right? I recognised from a young age that although I had years of just sitting on my bed playing guitar, I also quickly realised that it was that I wanted to be able to capture that guitar, record that guitar, and dive into that. And again, it's endless, right? But that's also been a journey in itself of me learning how to produce, and very much doing it on my own back, right? Of finding my own ways of doing things. But yeah, the actual production side of things and producing music, and my love for recording music and then mixing it and building songs up layer by layer has been a big part of my love and the area that I've wanted to explore.
That's very cool, man. And so what, I like, obviously I know the answer to this, right? But for those that are watching, what is the label that you've been producing music under?
So I've jumped on, over the years, I've been asked to jump on a couple of different labels, small labels within that underground house scene. And but it come to the point in 2023, it was actually a couple of years in the making, but just to go back, when I was in these parties, as I mentioned, the mystery, there was so much mystery behind where the music was coming from, and a big part of that was because I was watching the DJs put all these records out their bag. A lot of it was vinyl, right? So that was also part of what felt like a mission, was like, I wonder if again one day if I'd be having a record turn up that's got my own music on it. And I started getting asked to join different records, being like records that have got different artists on them, like maybe 3 or 4 artists, and then a possible like EPs of my own of being on records. So I kind of realised that, wow, I'm at that stage now where these opportunities are coming for me to have my music on these records that are going to again find themselves in these parties. But it also sort of showed me that rather than waiting for a green light, right, because especially for the vinyl industry, it was at a time with the pandemic and everything else, so there was loads of delays, and it's kind of a long process anyway. It can be a long process of getting music ready to be released on a vinyl record. But what it showed me was I was now getting the green light in many ways, that I was having that feedback loop of maybe my music's now ready to be released and in demand enough for it to be pressed on a record. And then I thought, right, so rather than waiting for the green light for other labels and stuff like that to ask me to do it, now that these opportunities are coming, it's probably time that I can also just do it myself, right? So I made the leap and put a little bit of risk into setting up my own record label, which I always sort of knew was going to come at one point. So I set up Zendala Records, is the record label. One of the records, that's the first record there. And and I launched that at the start of 2023, so a couple of years ago now. And that was very much it was from that moment on really that it all really kind of started rolling, where I recognised that the right sort of people in my mind, the DJs and people that I really admired and gone out listening to, really started sort of playing the music on a regular basis. And it was from that moment really, it was very much after I launched Sendala Records that I started seeing that more and more often, you know, and it kind of peaked in many ways last year. And that was when I had the gig in Armenia, and yeah, the music was even just me exploring that music, you know, it was probably last year where I recognised that I'm actually getting to a point where I'm pleasantly pleased with the outcome of the music I'm making, because up until then it had been very much make a track, do my best to finish it, so I'm getting good at that last 5% of finishing a piece of music, so I wasn't just getting stuck and never sharing music. I very much shared all along the way, but then I would just put it aside, share it, or put it aside and then start another one, always excited about the possibility of the next one just being a little bit better, being able to explore something else in the next one. And last year was very much where all that peaked, not only just the support from the DJs, but me feeling like I'd achieved the quality of music that I'd also always wondered if I could do within that sound, you know. Very
cool, man. And so because a lot of people that are watching this right now might also know you from Pattern Tusk, so how does Pattern Tusk fit into this? What is Pattern Tusk?
So Pattern Tusk was it was interesting, right? Because I'd played in bands throughout my teens, and it's a beautiful thing, right? When you got friends and family and everything else, they know that you're doing music, and you have to promote yourself, right? And this has always been a little bit of a weakness of mine. It was definitely back then. I'd say, take you for example, Justin, I've got a gig on the weekend, or I've just released this song, and you'd be like, yeah, great, I'll come along and listen. But I got to a point where I really wanted some honest feedback, right? I didn't just want people to come and see my music or listen to my music because they knew me. I wanted to have some honest feedback. Where would the music land if no one knew my age, no one knew who I was, and get that real honest feedback of where would the music land in its truest form. Will it go anywhere, right? And that's why I knew that I wanted to set up an alias, something that I didn't even tell my friends, right? Took them a couple of years for them to realise that it was me who was behind Pattern Tusk. But that just gave me that opportunity to not only explore without anyone knowing that I'm doing it, but also just to see where it landed, right? And it was kind of a good experiment, because even some of my early, the first track I shared got played in Fabric and got played at Amsterdam Dance Event, and that was outright, that's great for me, you know, that was real. And the tune was rough and raw, and I listen back now and it's very much one you can cringe from, but it showed me like, wow, you know, this is something that's so new to me. And I know that people aren't just playing the music because they know who Ryan is, or they didn't know who Ryan was, and they didn't even know what age I was, and I wasn't even old enough to go into the clubs at this stage, you know. I was like 17, 18, but the music was landing there, and that was enough for me to recognise that, right, if I keep exploring this, you know, I think there's something here. Over the years I started showing my face a little bit more, and of course my friends and that started to know who I was, and I put a face to the project. But that was very much what it was, you know. Pattern Tusk was an opportunity for me just to dive into the music with zero judgment, knowing that I could always just leave it alone if I didn't like it or whatever else. It was a sense of freedom, I suppose, and honest feedback of sharing something that wasn't linked to me and who I was.
Do you think part of that was also, you know, you spoke about the fact that you know, it's been a journey for you in being able to step into putting your face to things and having the confidence, and I know that's been a big journey for you. Do you think that was also part of the reason behind why you did that?
Definitely, because it's easier, right? There's a comfort zone in it as well, of like, I've always kind of enjoyed just getting on and doing things. I don't have trouble starting things, right? So, but what I recognise now, which is quite funny in a way, there'd be an element of embarrassment that I was going off and doing these things. Right? I knew I wasn't. I knew the music wasn't ready.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to be the sort of like, I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to go and do this. I was definitely not the sort to say that one day my music's going to be played over there and played by these DJs. Even though deep down I kind of knew that it would be. It was just that I had a journey to go on to get to that point. So that's all I needed to know. So there was definitely an element of me wanting to protect my vision and not talk too much about it before I'd actually done the thing that I was wondering if I could do. But yeah, definitely as a side of it of actually stepping out, 100%. You know, there was a comfort in not having to do that, right? And I also think that's why I stayed within that sound for many years, and I've shied away from doing the projects that I'm stepping into now is not only my fascination of music and that feeling, that quest, but also there's an element of comfort zone, right, of not having it not being about me. It was about the music, and if the music would land in those sorts of places. But I can definitely tell that his character growth and me growing up a little bit and gaining confidence through these last 5-6 years that now make me feel like I don't hold myself back in those ways that I definitely would have in the past, you know. And
I think it's something that everyone can relate to, right? Like we all have had those things where, you know, especially when it is that inner sound or that inner creativity or that side of us that we maybe, you know, have these passions in but don't necessarily share with everyone, that there can be this kind of hesitation in putting that out there. So I think there's a lot of people, whether they're musicians, producers, traditional, you know, artists, painters, whatever it is, right? Like in life, I think everyone has been through a period where they can relate to what you're saying there. Yeah. But that's a pretty impressive track record, man, of, you know, starting out as a young kid in a musical arts, performing arts school, to then, like you said, you know, you had your first gathering for the school, the what was the word you used, the where you played for the for the.
It was like I'd get called into assemblies and stuff like that, right? So the head teacher would come and do a chat, and then she'd. I remember sitting there at the back, still half asleep, right at the back of the assembly hall, and then I'd hear "Guitar Boy." I thought, oh no, that's me. She's calling me. I've got to go. And I remember playing guitar in front of the whole year with a 10p coin as a plectrum, because I didn't know I was going in that day to play. Yeah. But it was good, you know. That's good character growth. That was the good things of like playing music throughout my teens and being in different bands and stuff. I very much did get used to performing. Yeah. So I didn't have a problem with that side of things, but there was definitely an undercurrent as well of I suppose shyness, right, of actually stepping out and doing it. So it was good for me in that sense.
So quite a journey then to go from that and then producing for DJs and having it played, and then at events and, you know, your own label and all of these different things. So it's a very impressive journey. And
thank you. It's been good fun.
Yeah, man, I've enjoyed watching your growth throughout all as well. It's been really interesting to see the evolution of sound and you learning to express yourself, and then now like stepping into new sounds, but also to putting your face to those sounds, right?